Matt, welcome back to Beyond MD. I'm really excited to have you back on the show. Your first episode with me was a huge success. People loved hearing about your journey, your travels, what you've learned along the way. And then you proposed this really interesting idea about RESPs and even just taking things one step further about optimizing finances for our kids when it comes to their education. I thought it was a great idea, so welcome back.
Yeah, thanks, Yeth. And I'm obviously really happy to be here. I'm a fan of your podcast myself, and this is kind of a fun topic to talk about because I talk with people all the time about financial planning, and a big part of the conversation, especially up front, is to kind of try to put our finger on what people's values are, like what they want their money to support in their life specifically. Kind of optimize the planning for life fulfillment and not always necessarily wealth. And so people's priorities differ. You know, they might have a priority to pay off debt or save for a house or travel or something like that. But they're the one thing that is pretty much universal. If people have kids, they care about supporting their post-secondary education, and it's not cheap. So yeah, I was happy to reach out to you because I think that this is important, and I noticed that you hadn't, of all the great things that you've covered so far, you just hadn't quite gotten to this one yet. So I'm happy to have the honor of being here and doing this with you.
Very astute observation, by the way. I haven't done anything on RESPs, and initially I thought they were quite simple on the surface. But then after I started reading some of your work and digging beneath the surface, there is more to it than it first seems. So I'm really excited we're doing this. Matt, before we get into the RESP though, I just want to ask you, like, what are you up to now? Because the last time we talked, you had been writing on dividend strategy for many, many years. I know you're still doing that. You're putting out great content there, but now you are financially, like, you're a financial planner now, essentially, right? Like, you've been taking the steps to get certified and things. Like, how's that going?
Yeah. Yeah, actually, dividend strategy is taking a bit of a backseat now because I
Okay.
am so busy.
Yeah.
Doing flat fee financial planning is what I do.
Hmm.
Technically, I can't call myself a financial planner yet
Hmm.
until I have the letters behind my name. So one of the things that I've been doing is taking all the courses
Yeah.
in order to get my CFP, so Certified Financial Planner designation. And so where that's at is I have completed all of the courses
Uh-huh.
and I am now basically studying for the exam, and I'm going to take it this winter and hopefully pass the first time around. That's my goal. Apparently, it's pretty tough. It actually kind of feels like being in residency all over again and like preparing for the final exams there.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. So it sounds like the material is fairly rigorous, like the prep
Yeah,
process and all that. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It is. But I'll also say, it's actually been quite validating
Hmm.
because that was certainly not the beginning of my education in personal
Hmm.
finance. Like I've always been interested in personal finance. I kind of inherited that from my father. But I didn't go into business school or anything like that. I think because I've never really been motivated by money per se. I've been more motivated to find like meaning and fun and kind of challenging and entertaining things to do with life. And so, as you know, but maybe not all of your listeners know, I'm a physician first. So my background, my entry into the world of personal finance is a little bit weird. I really started learning about this stuff in earnest as a resident when I earned my first paycheck and I made the same mistakes that most people do. I started with a high fee, like high MER mutual funds with a financial advisor. But I was always interested in this stuff and learning along the way. And so after a couple of years, I started managing our own money. I've been managing our family's money for over 20 years now, reading constantly along the way, and also practicing medicine.
Hmm.
And so that just kind of grew and evolved over time. And the mistakes I made at the beginning were that I bought into this idea that being a successful investor and managing your own money needs to be really complicated, and it's about like finding really good companies and buying them before anybody else realizes that they're really good companies, and paying attention to the news and avoiding the next market crash, and then buy when it's low and sell high, and all of this stuff that seems to make sense on the surface, but in practice it doesn't actually work out most of the time. And
Yeah.
the real key to success in personal finance is actually way, way simpler than that. It's just, it's not always easy. but it is simple. And if you follow a handful of pretty simple concepts, then you will be successful. And I just found that so empowering personally, but also kind of sharing that with other people that after 14 years of medicine, as we talked about last time, we decided like we'd done enough things right with our money as a family that we realized that we had choices. So we decided to travel around the world for a year as a family.
Yeah, I love that story so much, Matt. That was very inspiring for me, and I think that you were one of the people who planted the seed to push me to try and do some of the same. So I can say happily that since 2023, we have been doing a ton of traveling as a family.
Yeah.
Everyone's bought in. The boys have bought in. They're great travelers now, and
Yeah.
we've built a lot of memories along the way. So I love that story about you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, there's something about traveling, particularly, at least for me, traveling for long periods of time. It no longer, after a little while, it no longer felt like a vacation. It was more of like a nomadic lifestyle. And it was, as I say, when I'm describing it to some people, like it was really as much of a journey on the inside as it was on the outside. And when we came back, what my wife Lindsay and I realized is that real wealth is having control over your time, and life's too short to kind of continue down paths that aren't aren't right for you. And for me, medicine was, I'm so glad I had that chapter in my life. Don't regret it for a second. Still comes in handy when kids have symptoms and injuries and things like that.
Yeah.
But what I realized when we got back from our trip is that the way that I can continue to contribute is by doing this. And I really wanted to help people more with money because it's just so interwoven with every aspect of our lives. People are only going to be able to do what's important to them if they understand money. And so that's really where I come from philosophically with what I do now. I started a course for doctors, and that was good, but what really took off was the one-on-one flat fee financial planning. And really, I guess, kind of the market told me what people needed. And so that's what I do full time now is flat fee financial planning. I don't sell anything. I don't manage people's money for them. I don't receive kickbacks. It's just being unbiased like that is really important to me personally. And it's what a lot of physicians are looking for as well. Somebody who they can trust, knows what they're doing, particularly around corporations and physician finances, and can really kind of guide them to an evidence-based, simple way to manage their own money. That's also very, very effective, and so I love it. That's what I do all the time now.
Amazing. So you're not necessarily investing people's money, but let's say somebody comes to you, you will get to know them, understand what their priorities are, where they are in life, and then you will help them to generate a roadmap. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, that's a really good way. That's a really good way of putting it. So I don't manage people's money for them, but I give them a roadmap or a blueprint for how to manage it effectively themselves. And what a lot of people come to realize once they start getting interested in this stuff is, just buying vGrow is not a financial plan. There's other components, multiple other components of a financial plan, like cash flow management, risk management, retirement planning, that all need to be considered together. Mm-hmm. They're not necessarily overly complicated. It's totally in the wheelhouse of anybody who's smart enough to become a doctor is absolutely smart enough to manage their own money if they have a bit of interest and they have a little bit of time to invest in that process. But all of those things are important and they all need to work together. And so it can be overwhelming at first if you're not familiar. And so I just try to make sense of it all for everybody, take all that mountain of information that's available to all of us and distill it down to what's important for that individual client and their family. And then very efficiently, because doctors are busy, our time is really valuable, put it into a working plan. And RESPs are obviously part of that if you've got kids.
Yes, we're going to move on to this, but one comment. I have to tip my hat to you, Matt, because I think when somebody is going through a transition like you went through, you practiced medicine for 14 years and then decided maybe it was time to pivot. I know a lot of people who have not gone through the exact same thing, but who have gone through these transition phases. There can be a lot of confusion there, a lot of uncertainty there, but it really sounds like you made this opportunity to pivot, deliver value to people in a different way, a real priority. And you took the steps to get there. right? Like you knew what you had to do to get there. You started with the course, then you started with these one-on-one conversations. Now you're getting certified. I don't think everyone would necessarily be able to do that, but it's great to see that you've kind of followed through in this stepwise fashion. I think it's amazing.
Well, I appreciate that. I think you're probably giving me too much credit. And it's not like I always had everything figured out. When I have these conversations with people who are maybe thinking about doing the same thing, a lot of physicians in particular, they, in my experience anyway, they really want to know what to expect. They want to plan. You know, they want to know, okay, well, if I'm going to not do medicine anymore, like this is how, like this is what I'm going to do. And I actually found that I couldn't do that. I didn't know what we were going to do after our trip. I didn't know if we were going to continue traveling. Actually, we were literally shopping for sailboats, catamarans. We thought we were going to continue sailing after our
Wow.
backpacking for a year. My point is that I think it's more common that, particularly for really, really busy people like physicians, and I was definitely in that boat, sometimes you just need to make the leap. Know you have the financial means to do it. You've got that space. Make the leap, hit that giant reset button, give yourself space and time, and see what happens. Because so many physicians are so busy all the time that they don't have time to sit down and reflect, to explore other things. And that's what I needed to do. I certainly did not know when we left on our trip that this is what I was going to do afterwards. It just evolved this way, and I'm really happy that it did.
I love it. So RESPs, Registered Education Savings Plan. Give us a very high level overview, Matt, and then we can dive into some details.
Sure. So first of all, the RESP is the best way to save for post-secondary education that is available to us, at least since 2018. Before 2018, when the government instituted the TOSI rules, there was actually a superior strategy for those of us physicians who are incorporated, which would have been to pay our adult children dividends from the corporation. And so I was in that boat. I was an incorporated physician, and that was my plan. And then they changed the rules. And what the TOSI rules meant was that if you were to pay a family member dividends who is not working at least 20 hours for a corporation, blah, 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 those dividends would be taxed at the highest marginal tax rate. So essentially eliminated the ability to do that. So all of a sudden, I've got 4 kids. I don't have any RESP, and they're all on the path, fingers crossed, to go to post-secondary education. And so I really made it a very personal project of mine to learn as much as I could about RESP. So that's really kind of the backstory for how I got into this and why I was really personally interested in figuring out how to optimize these things.
There's nothing like rule changes to the corporation like that to really like get you going
Oh
in
yeah,
high
light
gear,
a
right?
fire.
Yeah.
For sure. So what I discovered, I think one of the cool things about RESPs actually is that, like for people who are managing their own money or thinking about doing that, is that they kind of have a really nice balance. It's not too hard to understand the basics, which I'll describe in a minute. But also, as you mentioned earlier, there's kind of other levels of kind of satisfying complexity if you really want to optimize it. But like 90% of the benefit of RESPs is just understanding the basics, and it's not too hard. So I think the best way to understand the basics of pretty much any registered account is to kind of think of what are the rules around contributions, what happens to the money once it's in the account, and then finally, what happens to the money when it's coming out of the account.
I love it.
So that's how I think about all registered accounts. So when it comes to RESPs and contributions for RESPs, for every student and every beneficiary, there's a $50,000 maximum contribution. There's no annual maximum. It's just a total maximum of $50,000. So that's important. Now, those contributions are made with after-tax dollars. So unlike our RSPs or FHSAs, there's no tax deduction for putting money into an RESP. So $50,000 maximum contribution. The really cool thing about RESPs, the biggest benefit of all though, is that the government will top up your contributions at a rate of 20%, up to $500 per child per year. And that's called a Canada Education Savings Grant, or a CESG. So if I say CESG, that's what I'm referring to. Mm-hmm. Now, for lower income families, there's also things like the Canada Learning Bond. That's, if I recall correctly, probably not going to apply to most physicians. That's mainly for families with incomes of under about $50,000 per year, if I recall correctly. But the main thing is the CESG. So $500, free money. 20% is like a guaranteed 20% rate of return on the first $2,500 you contribute to the account per kid per year. The other thing I'll mention about contributions is that if you've missed a couple of years, if you're a little bit late, you don't get on top of it right away, you don't need to worry about that because you can catch up on contributions. But you can only catch up 1 year at a time. So say you've got a 2-year-old and you didn't open the RESP for the first 2 years of their life. In year 3, you could contribute, instead of $2,500 to get the $500 CESG, you could contribute $5,000 and get $1,000 in CESG. Do that again the next year. Now you've caught up for the 2 years that you've missed. And then after that, you could contribute $2,500 per year and you get the $500 CESG.
That's what I've been doing. I opened mine up for our family when my oldest was 4, my youngest was 1.5. So I was a bit behind the 8 ball. And so I've been putting in like $5,000 per kid just to catch up and earn the CESG at the same time.
Yeah. So that's really contributions. Now, once the money is in the account, you can invest it in really anything that you could invest in within a TFSA or an RSP. And maybe we'll talk about what you might want to do with the investments within the RESP in a little bit. But the main thing to realize about the RESP, the second benefit, first benefit being that free money from the government. The second benefit is that once money's in there, it grows tax-free. So if you're investing in ETFs or whatever, then any capital gains, dividends, maybe interest, that's all tax-free within the RESP basket. So that's pretty simple. And then the last step is, well, what happens when the money comes out? And there is some details there which we'll get into, but the bottom line is that the taxable portion of the RESP comes out and is taxed in the student's hands. So the RESP itself does not belong to the child. That's actually something to be clear about. It belongs to the parent or parents. But when the money comes out, the taxable portion, which is not the whole thing, we'll talk about that. The taxable portion is taxed in the student's hands. And so it'll probably come out essentially tax-free because students in general don't have much income, if any, and they also have the availability of student tax credit. So it's probably going to come out tax-free or very close to that.
Okay, let's talk about setting up an RESP. When I went and set one up, I ended up setting up a family RESP, but then you can also set them up individually per child. I think each option comes with its own set of pros and cons, but maybe you can just take us through that briefly in terms of setting one up.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. For the vast majority of people, a family RESP is going to be the most appropriate. The difference, technically the names are family RRSP and specified RRSP, yes, or an individual RRSP, RESP, as you say. So there's really not much of a reason to open a specified or individual RESP unless you want to open an RESP for a non-blood relative. So what the government deems as a blood relative is a child, biological child, adopted child, stepchild, grandchild, or sibling. Any of those, you can open up a family RESP. But say you wanted to open up an RESP for a niece or a nephew or a cousin or something like that, you can't open a family RESP. It has to be specified.
Okay.
The reason why there's not really any cons to opening up a family RESP. And the benefits of opening up a family RESP is that it's much more flexible. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have two children and one of them goes to university and then medical school and their education costs are much higher, say like twice or three times that of the other child who chooses to go to trade school or something like that, you can use the assets in that RESP between those two children in any proportion. It's
Mm-hmm.
perfectly fine to do that. Whereas a specified RESP, it's just for one kid. And so you kind of have to use it all for that one child.
Okay, perfect. Let's talk about contributing money to an RESP. And I went through your blog, Dividend Strategy, and I think you had talked about three different scenarios. One is putting in $2,500 a year and then catching up in the very last year. The
Yeah.
second option, which is probably difficult for a lot of people, is to put 50,000 upfront per child to just give that money more time in the markets to compound. And then the third option was a hybrid strategy. I think it was maybe around 16,500 initially,
Yeah.
and then smaller increments to basically put more money in at the start, but then also get the benefit of the CESG. What did you find amongst these options in terms of what would be the most optimal way to go if we're going to make the most out of this thing?
Yeah, exactly. So I did that analysis
Mm-hmm.
again because I was trying to figure out how to optimize the RESP because we needed to catch up. We've got four kids,
Mm-hmm.
and so yeah. So the way that most people will fund an RESP is by maximizing the CESG. So $2,500 per kid per year, you'll get your $500 free money from the government. That's a great way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
By the time the last year that you can contribute to an RESP is in the calendar year when the child turns 17.
Okay.
If you do that, $2,500 per year for those years, by the end, in order to reach that $50,000 cap, you would need to put in an extra
Mm-hmm.
$7,500. Okay, so if you do that, uh, then that's certainly not a bad way to do it at all. But if you think about the way the RESP works, there's one detail I didn't mention before, which is that the CESG maxes out at $7,200 per child.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get it every single year. If you do $2,500 per year contributions, in the 14th year, you will have maxed out the CESG. You won't get any
Mm-hmm.
more when you continue to make your contributions. And so in the 14th year, you will have contributed about $36,000 if you're doing $2,500 per year.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, you will have $14,000 of
Right.
unused contribution room that you won't get any more CESG for. And so the analysis that I ran was, as you mentioned, $2,500 per year all the way to the end, top up at the end. Number two, put in the whole $50,000 up front. You'll only get $500 worth of CESG, but you get more money in that account earlier to
Mm-hmm.
compound tax free. And so, the magic of compounding, there's benefits to that as well. Does that outweigh the CESG that you're giving up year after year after year? Well, that depends on a lot of things, a lot of assumptions. It's actually kind of a complicated analysis to do. And what I found is that it might actually beat the first option. But is there kind of a middle of the road approach where you take that $14,000 of contribution room that wouldn't necessarily generate more CESG at the end, and instead, if you've got that money available and you're not taking it from your RSP or TFSA contributions, what if you put that in up front? And what I found was that that was actually the optimal strategy. So instead of putting in $2,500 in year one, you put in $16,500.
Mm-hmm.
You get the $500 CESG. As the years go by and you continue with your $2,500 contributions,
Mm-hmm.
you'll max out your CESG, so you'll get the maximum amount of government money. You get as much money in there as possible in order to grow tax-free as well. And I found that to be the optimal strategy.
So that's so interesting, Matt. I guess I would have thought that if somebody had the ability to do so, to put in 50,000 per child right up front, I thought that option would have trumped everything else. But I'm guessing that's so. It sounds like that's not what you found.
So there is a lot more nuance, and it kind of
Mm-hmm.
depends how you run the simulations. So,
Mm-hmm.
so you and I had a little bit of email discourse before this, and I've had some communication with the Looney Doctor about this as well, because he did
Yeah.
independently
He.
did an analysis as
Yes.
well.
Yeah. Mark did that
Uh,
too.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I've actually been in communication with him. We've had great talks over the last couple of years about a couple of things, but he did come to a different conclusion. And what he found is that the optimal amount to front load the RESP with, instead of 16,500, might be something like $35,000. And so I asked him about that, and I said, I asked him if he had thought about the fact that there's risk. There's a certain risk that you take in investing a lump sum upfront or front loading the RESP. What if the stock market goes down in those first couple of years? You can't contribute anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it could go the other way, but we don't know. And so there's this thing in investing called risk-adjusted returns. And risk-adjusted returns are really all that matters. What it means is that a guaranteed rate of return is basically just worth more than an uncertain rate of return. And so the way that I think about contributing to an RESP is that CESG, that 20% top up from the government, is a guaranteed rate of return. And so giving up that guaranteed rate of return, I think that needs to be taken into account in how we think about the optimal way to fund an RESP. And so even though in the Looney Doctor's analysis, he found this optimal number of about $35,000 of a front load, at the end of the day, that only results in about a $4,000 or $5,000 difference in the final balance of the RESP. And we had this conversation. We both agreed that in real life, we would both absolutely take the guaranteed rate of return, that guaranteed CESG money, any
Yeah.
day of the week
Yeah.
over the risk
Okay.
that is entailed with a larger lump sum. So I'm
What
kind of a
kind?
bottom line
Yeah.
kind of guy.
Okay.
Looney
Yeah.
Doctor does fantastic analysis. He's got way
Totally.
more skills than
Totally.
I do. I'm kind of like what's the bottom line here? And I think for all that detail, the bottom line is that prioritize the CESG. If you have the money available and you're
Mm-hmm.
not taking from RSP or TFSA contributions, you're not stealing from a line of credit or something like that.
Yeah.
If you have an extra $14,000 around that in non-registered money that you can use to front load the RESP, that would be the optimal strategy.
Okay, and what kind of dollar figures roughly are we talking about? Like, let's just say everyone's got a similar rate of return. If you went $2,500 per year versus the $16,500 in that initial year, followed by $2,500 increments, what's the potential difference dollar amount that one could end up with in that RESP?
Yeah, so when I did my analysis, what I found is that it's roughly between contributing about $2,500 per year and then topping it up at the end versus front loading with that $14,000.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, or at the end of 18 years, it's probably about a $30 or $40,000
Oh wow.
difference.
Okay, that's reasonably significant.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So when I started to invest in the RESP for Rohan and Zion, my two boys, I started with something a bit more aggressive. So XEQT. Actually, I put in VEQT because I was doing XEQT myself, and I was like, okay, let's see which one does better. Probably doesn't matter, but for all intents and purposes,
They're
XEQT. I was
essentially
kind of
equal.
yeah. I was starting with that, but now Rohan is entering grade 5. Next year, he's going to be in middle school, and there's not an indefinite investment window until the time will come when he will be relying on that money. So then I actually decided to put on the brakes a little bit and I dropped down to XGRO, and I wondered, oh, have I done this too early? But again, I'm trying to do what's right for me. But I'm curious,
Yeah.
Matt, what kind of approach do you take? And even in your conversations with other people, depending on where your kids are at, what investment approach have you been taking or have been advocating for inside an RESP?
Yeah, this is one of these situations where there's probably lots of wrong answers, and there's a couple of right answers. There's no like one right way to do this. I think the wrong way to approach investing in the RESP is to use it as a place to speculate on individual stocks.
100% agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably wrong for most people to do in any of their accounts that are earmarked for long-term retirement. But that's a discussion for another day. But I think one of the really great things about an RESP is it's kind of like a microcosm of your retirement accounts, just in one account. And what I mean by that is you shouldn't really consider the RESP as just one piece of your broader portfolio. It's kind of its own portfolio. And the reason why I
Agreed.
say that is
Yeah.
because it's got its own very specific goals to support post-secondary education and its own specific timeline, which is going to be different than your retirement timeline. So you can kind of treat it as kind of like a practice run for your retirement planning that you're going to be doing with your other accounts.
It's an interesting analogy. I like that though.
Yeah, yeah. And if you
Yeah.
think about it that way, you can actually learn a lot from managing your own RESP. So I believe in keeping it simple, not just because it's easier to do, but also because simplicity tends to be far more effective in the long run as well. So my approach with an RESP is to use an all-in-one ETF. I think it's a
Yeah.
perfect place to use an all-in-one ETF, like the ones that you mentioned. I don't think that there's really enough, for most people anyway, there's not enough contribution room. There's not enough assets in there that you could really create a diversified portfolio using anything other than ETFs. So whether you're using all in one or whether you're using like the couch potato approach with a handful of ETFs, that's fine, whatever you like to do. With respect to your specific question about kind of when to maybe adjust your asset allocation, well, you're exactly right. It really does depend on your time frame. And just what I counsel people is that, I repeat this over and over again all the time, money you're going to need within the next 5 years should not be in the stock market, or the bond market for that matter.
Yeah.
And so if you apply that principle to the RESP, the way that I apply it anyway is once your kids hit high school, then they're probably within 5 years of needing that money. And so my approach is to start selling off chunks of that all-in-one ETF and buying a GIC with it. So that's my favorite approach. So if they're within 5 years of needing the money, then say you're invested in XEQT or XGRO or the Vanguard versions of those, then you have a look at your financial plan. You make an estimate of how much they might need in their first year. You sell off that chunk of the ETF and you buy a GIC, a 5-year GIC for that amount. And that GIC then is going to come due when you need the money with interest, which will help adjust for inflation. And then you've got the first year taken care of. And then once they're in grade 10, then you do exactly the same thing. And then just kind of keep on doing that. If you've waited a little bit longer, then of course you could just look at maybe they're going to be going to post-secondary education in 2 years. Then you might buy a ladder of a 3-year, 4-year, and 5-year GIC, for example. But that's my favorite way to do it is to not play around with the asset allocation ETFs. Just stick to one, whatever you're comfortable with, whether it's 80-20 or 100%, 60-40, whatever works for you. But then building a GIC ladder so that income is guaranteed, is coming your way. You don't have to worry about it. That makes a lot of sense to me, and it just
that resonates with me
keeps it simple.
100%. I like that approach a lot. One thing I've been doing right now while the kids are young, I'm fairly risk averse with the RESP. I definitely do not speculate on individual stocks with that. Never would do that. One thing I do is I always while the kids are right now 10 and 7, I have about 15% of it allocated to like a high interest ETF, PSA. And that's kind of always there. And then when the markets dip a little bit, then I may move a little bit over. But then as time goes on, certainly grade 8, 9, I think I take the approach that you advocate for. So,
Yeah.
okay, let's get on with, okay, things are going to grow in this bucket tax sheltered, as you mentioned, and then we're going to be withdrawing. So this is like the last half of the conversation. There's a bit of an alphabet soup here. I don't really want to complicate it too much, but you kind of have the return of payments, the educational assistance payments. But I guess my question is, when it's time to withdraw, what is kind of the strategy that you tell people to take? First, I would imagine that people should sit down and realize, well, over what time frame will their kids be in school? The money will probably they'll have to withdraw it over that time frame. And then within the different buckets inside that RESP, how do you suggest that people start? Maybe give us a bit of an overview here.
Yeah, I think that's the first thing to realize that a lot of people don't realize what you just said. There's different buckets within the RESP. So their contributions that you made into the RESP, that is one bucket. Those contributions you've already paid tax on. So the RESP belongs to you as the parent. You could take those contributions out anytime and completely tax-free. Few minor details there, but essentially anytime tax-free. The other bucket is kind of divided into, there's the money that you got from the government in terms of the CESG, and then there's also the investment returns that have accumulated in that account. Both of those are taxable to the eligible student. Those combined, so CESG and the investment returns, when that gets taken out, that is called an education assistance payment. So it's the EAP, and that is taxable to the student. In general, from a strategy point of view, and really just to kind of be aware, that's the money you want to take out first. Because generally in the first couple of years of post-secondary education, that's generally when the student's income is going to be the lowest. In later years they might have a co-op or something like that might bump them up. So in general, you want to take out the EAP first. And when you apply to your brokerage to make a withdrawal, they'll actually have that on the form. Do you want to take out EAP, or do you want to take out, they might have a slightly different label, but usually it's a PSA, post-secondary, now I'm blanking on it. Oh, it's PSE, post-secondary education payment. And the post-secondary education payment is basically your contributions. So EAP first, there's a limit on that. Up until March of last year, you could only take out $5,000 of the EAP, the taxable portion, within the first 13 weeks. But as of March of last year, that increased to $8,000.
Okay.
And so $8,000 of EAP within the first 13 weeks, and then you can take out the PSE, which is basically your contributions, anytime, tax free.
Okay, so is there a limit? Like, let's say in the first year of post-secondary education, is there an absolute dollar limit that one can take out from the RESP?
No,
No, there's not.
There's no limit.
Okay.
But you wouldn't want to take out too much, because you would bump your student up into a higher tax bracket.
Right, of course. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. The other thing I'll just mention that we just haven't touched on yet, but it's really important, is that the withdrawals from an RESP, they can be used for anything that is
let's talk
related
about that.
to the post-secondary education. So it's not just room, board, tuition, books. It's also transportation, like if they needed a car or train tickets or whatever. It's anything that's related. My understanding is that it's quite rare for these to be audited, and there's a lot of leeway in how that money can be used.
Okay, interesting. You mentioned the car. Are you referring to like a car for purchase? if a student needed it to like get around during their training? Is that
That's
a
my
reasonable
understanding.
expense?
That is
Yeah.
my
Oh wow.
understanding. Maybe
Wow.
one of your listeners will weigh in and say they got audited and that didn't fly. I don't know, but that is my understanding, and I believe I've even seen it on the CRA website that they specifically say transportation, and so yeah, that's my understanding.
Now, I think the CRA is going to have a list of institutions, programs that are going to be eligible for the RESP, so
Yeah.
people can track that. I'll try to put something in the show notes as well. But what if somebody has a very lengthy education? Let's say it goes way beyond undergrad. Maybe they go to medical school. They're going to be earning money in residency if they just decide to do that. But are there any limitations when it comes to a lengthier education, a professional program, anything like that
No.
that we need to be aware of?
No
Nothing at
limitations,
all.
and just to comment on the intro to that question, the qualifying programs is extremely broad. So it can be
It is,
college,
eh?
it can be university, it can even be out of country, international. It's very, very broad. As long as it's a post-secondary education program somewhere,
Okay.
chances are you're going to be able to use the RESP money for it.
One little nugget that I forgot to ask you about. If we go to the RESP bucket and we go to our investments within there, let's say there are foreign dividends. Are there going to be withholding taxes on foreign dividends inside an RESP just for like the nitty gritty? Not going to make a difference big picture, but I would assume there would be withholding
I
taxes, but I wasn't sure, so I thought I'd just throw it out there.
Sure, yeah. I've never had that question before, so I'm not going to pretend I'm 100% confident in this, but I would also assume that there would be. My understanding is that the only retirement, like with the only investment account that's recognized that would be exempt from withholding tax on foreign dividends is the RRSP.
Okay. Now, let's say our kids decide on a bit of a different path. They don't want to go to school after high school. What happens to the RESP then?
Yeah, so you've got choices of what you could do with the RESP. It's a lot more versatile than people think. So your first choice is you could just sit on it. An RESP can be open for 35 years. So they might need to take a gap year or a gap 5 years or something like
Mm-hmm.
that, but they might come around and then go to school. And so you can just keep the RESP open up to 35 years. The second option is you could transfer the RESP to another qualifying beneficiary.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an option as well. The third one that a lot of people aren't aware of is that you can actually transfer the RESP to your RRSP if you have the contribution room available. Now, if you do that, you would have to pay back the CESG,
Mm-hmm.
but up to $50,000 can be transferred to your RRSP, and that includes investment returns as well. It's not just your contributions.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
Yeah,
so you have to have the contribution room for that to be possible.
yeah.
And then I imagine along the way, would you get that tax deduction as well? Probably would, right?
I don't believe you get the tax deduction.
Oh, you don't, hey? Interesting.
No, that's probably
Interesting.
why they give you that option is because they're coming out ahead. But yeah, up to $50,000 can go to the RRSP, and then the last option is you could just withdraw the funds. And so if you withdraw the funds, then your contributions that you've already paid tax on, that comes out tax free because you've
Mm-hmm.
already paid the tax. The CESG would have to be returned to the government.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this thing that the government, again, word letter salad or whatever you referred to it before, the investment returns the government calls AIP, so it's an accumulated interest payment.
Yeah.
And when that comes out to you, then it would be taxed as regular income to you plus 20%.
No way.
That's the way that works. But it's
Plus
not going to be, it's not a
20%.
big deal.
Yeah.
Like it's not going to be a
Yeah.
huge amount of money because your
Uh-huh.
in my opinion anyway, your contributions will have already come out,
Yeah.
tax free, and all that. So between all of those
Yeah.
options, my feeling is that it's quite versatile and you can usually, find something that works.
I know I had a bit of a reaction to that additional 20% penalty, but you're right. In the grand scheme of things, probably not going to be an enormous sum of money, but
Right.
it's just a bit of a surprise to me. I guess I can't really rationalize that one out. But Matt, let's before
I
we move
think I
on.
think the
Yeah,
rationale. My
yeah.
guess about my guess
No,
about
no,
the
go for it.
rationale is it's to compensate for the tax-free compounding you had
Yeah, yeah.
within that
Okay,
account. Yeah, that's my guess.
okay. Before we move on, I just want to make sure when it comes to withdrawals, have we covered most of what people need to know? Did we miss anything?
I think that's covered it.
Okay. Now, you were also kind of talking about now that your oldest, Owen, it's his first day today. So, guys, we're
It
recording
is.
this on September 3rd, and Owen is U of T engineering. Is that right?
He's yeah,
Yeah.
he's U of T, and yeah, and that's another motivation for me to reach out to you because, I was budgeting about $25,000 per kid per year of parental support, and that's probably actually conservative. That's probably generous looking at the overall data for how much school costs, even university costs in Canada. But these engineering programs, man, like the tuition alone at most engineering programs is about $15,000.
Is that
And
right?
yep,
15 grand? Oh,
and
wow.
his
Yes.
accommodation alone per year, not even including food, is about $25,000.
Holy smokes. Yeah,
This
yeah,
is
yeah.
not our choice. This is like what U of T gave him.
Yeah.
And then of course there's food on top of that, books and all kinds of extras. Yeah, sometimes it can be a lot more than what you were expecting.
Wow. Wow. I didn't know about the 15K for tuition for engineering. I'm not at all surprised by the accommodation, given that he's at U of T in Toronto.
Yeah.
Now, Matt, what about I think you maybe have some thoughts and some observations about okay, you've got the RESP. Now, when it comes to just kind of maximizing financial assistance for our kids, I think you had mentioned that the parental income can also play a little bit of a role. Can you talk to us about this just so we can round out the conversation?
Yeah, so I had a personal interest in this. I started thinking about it when I realized what the bills were going to look like for Owen in particular. And doing what I do now, my wife works part-time. She does speech therapy. She loves her work. She doesn't make a lot of money at it though. And for me, doing what I do, I do have the option of scaling my work up or down, and like I'm in control of how much I make. And so knowing that student aid is calculated based on, largely anyway, based on family income. I got thinking, well, is it worth me maybe scaling down and going part-time so that Owen could get more student aid? Now, before I get into maybe some of the details of what I discovered kind of analyzing this, I will say I realized that this might rub some people the wrong way. Adjusting your income just to get more student aid. I totally understand if people have conscientious objections to that. Personally, I feel pretty comfortable with it for a variety of reasons. The first one is because, RESP contribution limits haven't changed since 2007. It has not caught up with the inflation for post-secondary education costs. And so we all have to find ways to kind of make it work. Second thing is I'm a little bit chuffed about the change in the rules in 2018. And so, I do feel like we're just playing by the rules that the government
Yeah.
sets, and so
Yeah.
I personally feel okay to kind of, as long as we're working within the rules, kind of play the game as they've set them.
Reasonable. Yeah.
So I just want to kind of put out that disclaimer that this might not be for everybody, but the research that I did, I found out that I could adjust my income a little bit, and Owen could get more student aid. And in particular, then I got thinking, well, what if I no longer have my medical corporation because I haven't been practicing for about 4 years or so, but I had the option of making a new corporation, running my income, doing flat fee financial planning through a corporation, and because we don't need all the money. We've got some non-registered funds. We could live on our non-registered funds from the sale of a previous house and take a lower income in order to allow the kids to get more student aid. And what I was able to confirm is that the family income that is used in order to determine student aid is line 150 on your personal tax return. It does not take into account corporate income. It is just personal income of the parents. So when I realized that, then I dove into analyzing, okay, well, what could be like the optimal family income in order to optimize student aid? And what I found is that if you can get your family income to about $100,000 per year, if you have 2 kids going through post-secondary education, they could get up to, over a 4-year degree, combined, they could get up to $60,000 in grants that don't have to be paid back. Not to mention about $80,000 in interest-free loans, interest-free while they're students and 6 months after. And so it can make a really big difference if you have the ability to do a little bit of financial planning and adjust your income in those years when kids are in school. It can make a big difference in the right situation. Now, there's lots and lots of details that go into those calculations. There's, it really depends on, do the kids have assets other places, like have they received an inheritance from a grandparent, or something like that. It's very school specific as well. But I just want people to be aware of this, that this is an option for some people. If you need to have other money that your family can live on in order to do this. And so if you have non-registered money, or for incorporated physicians, not to get too deep into the weeds, but incorporated physicians, they might have a CDA balance, a capital dividend account balance in their corporation, that money can flow through tax-free. That does not show up on line 150. These are all things that can be done in order to maximize student aid.
Matt, really interesting insights for sure. And I appreciate you sharing all that just to round out the conversation. I want to ask you one really important question. I know that you, for quite some time now, I have viewed you as somebody who is financially free. You've had the time freedom to spend that time with your family. I was having a few conversations with some friends, and I'm not trying to worry anybody in my department or hospital, but mentally I have toyed with the idea of scaling down work a little bit. Haven't done that yet for various reasons, but a few people told me, they said, Yatin, you may want to do that now while your kids are really, really young. They're probably going to need you more now. And then later on, let's say if they're entering undergrad, maybe they're moving out of town, you could perhaps scale up then. That I find mentally challenging to do, but it just made me kind of think, and I thought you'd be the perfect person to ask because you've had some time freedom for a while, spending a lot of time with your wife and your 4 boys. What's your view on that? Do you think that there is a certain window in your experience where the kids are going to benefit from the time that we give them more than other periods in their life? I'd love your take on this.
Yeah, I do think so. I had kind of an epiphany in around 2017 that it's so easy to just go on autopilot. The definition of success for a lot of us was kind of defined for us, and we kind of take it for granted that, you work hard in school, you get the best grades you can, you maybe even get into medical school, become a doctor, but it doesn't stop there. Then you work really hard as a doctor, you make lots of money, you're really, really busy, but you buy a house, you drive nice cars, and often with the goal of having kind of funding some kind of luxurious retirement when your kids are gone. And that's kind of the definition of quote unquote success that a lot of us, including me for the longest time, kind of subscribe to without even realizing that it's only one definition of success. And that absolutely might be right for some people, maybe even a lot of people, I don't know. But for me, it definitely wasn't. And I just started, like, this light bulb went off and I started thinking, of that as one trajectory, but there's many other paths that you could take, whether it's doing what we did and taking a year off and then just kind of seeing what happens, or, you know, maybe taking just more vacation overall, or several mini retirements, or maybe fully retiring for 5 years and then going back to, like, it could be different things for different people. You know, I think for those of us with kids, I haven't met anybody with kids who wouldn't say that they are the most important thing to them. And so for me, you know, I was more than happy to financially, we'd kind of reached a level of what some people call lean fire. So we'd saved enough that we had enough to cover our basic living needs. We wouldn't have to worry about those. Anything extra beyond that, we'd have nicer things and stuff like that. That's the kind of milestone that we had reached. And that was enough for us. We had this window of opportunity to do something big and crazy and important to us with our family, which was travel around the world for a year. Our kids were between 5 and 10 years old. And to us, that was the perfect time. We've met lots of other families who've done it at different ages, and they all say it was the perfect time. But for us, that seemed to be the perfect time. And we're so glad we did it. But we're also glad that, you know, when we came back, we realized that real wealth is having control over your time. And so we purposely moved to a place that was not a high cost of living area, so that we still had control over our time. And that's been honestly even more important over the years since we got back from our trip than it was for our trip, because you just never know what's going to happen with your kids, when they're going to need you. So I think it can look like a lot of different things for a lot of different people. But yeah, I don't think anybody will ever regret taking a bit more time, being a little bit less busy, and, not to sound cliche, but just being able to be present for your kids. I will be honest with you, I wasn't able to be really present for my kids like I now know I can be before we took the trip. I was just voluntarily, it was totally my choice. I was just so busy all the time. My brain was always going with the next shift, the next project, next thing I was learning about. I'm just that kind of person. But I really needed that to kind of figure out how to slow down. So I guess, you know, the last thing I'll say about this, maybe I'm all over the place, I apologize. But the last thing I'll say about this is that even though I made kind of like a big sudden change and we went on that trip, that was actually really, really hard. And I think that there's a lot to be said, particularly if you're, as you're describing, you're not 100% sure. Like, try like slowly scaling back and see what it feels like. And you'll probably just know whether it's for you or not.
That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. Matt, I love it. I love learning from your journey, and I think there's a lot of valuable lessons that you have come across, and I appreciate you sharing all this with everybody. I think this last segment here for me is certainly one of the most important parts of our conversation today. So I'm really happy we finished on that note. And Matt, as always, thank you so much for your time. And I can't wait until the next time we talk.
Well, yeah, it's a pleasure talking to you, and please don't get me wrong. Like, I'm just figuring this stuff out as I go too, and I'm happy to talk about it, because I think talking about it allows us all to process it a little bit better and learn from each other. And you know,
yeah,
parenting, we're all just flying by the seats of our pants anyway.
Absolutely, Matt. And I'm excited to see what comes for you in this next stage. You know, as you are getting certified and you're having more one-on-one conversations, just really excited to see where this goes for you. And good luck with that.
Yeah, me too. Thanks very much.
Of course, man.